Today's announcements come just days after every American over the age of 16 is now eligible for their shot to sign up for the vaccine. So far, more than 50% of American adults are at least partially vaccinated, and the Biden administration wants to see that number, of course, go up. Joining me live tonight to talk about these new efforts and the latest on all the vaccine headlines today is Dr. Cameron Webb. He is the White House Senior Policy Advisor for COVID-19 equality. Thanks so much for being with us, Doctor. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Certainly some big news. The president making good on his promise on those 200 million shots during his time in office. As we speak tonight, roughly 25% of the country fully vaccinated. 40% of the country has one dose. So that is certainly promising news. But now the headline today is that it seems to be there is more supply than there is demand. So this vaccine hesitancy issue is now a priority. Can we reverse the trend that we're seeing, and exactly who out there is hesitant?
Well, you know, the data that we've seen shows that there have been a pretty stable number of folks who've remained pretty hesitant here. And these are, a lot of times, these are folks from various communities. So I don't want to describe it as one population in general, but we know that there's about 20% of the population who, since December, has pretty consistently said they're less interested in being vaccinated. You know, we do know that if you look at specific demographics, you know, some of the groups that are more likely to be in that last 20% are, you know, going to be rural conservatives. It's going to be some evangelicals. And so I think that when we're looking at those communities in particular, a lot of folks have pointed at historically marginalized populations, but, you know, we've seen that there has been increased interest. They've kind of moved toward being interested in being vaccinated. So that number, it changes. And the key there is that there are things we can do to move that movable middle, to encourage folks to get vaccinated, especially when we lean into trusted messengers with trusted messages. And that's exactly what we're aiming to do.
And again, 25% of the country fully vaccinated. The goal for herd immunity, somewhere in the 75 to 80% range. Here's a question that's been on my mind for months now. If these vaccination numbers start to plateau, if we don't get to that 75, 80, what does life look like then if we fall well short of the herd immunity threshold?
Well, there are a lot of different factors that go into answering that question. So the first thing is how close do we get? How far do we get in kind of ending the spread of this pandemic? Remember, there are other things that can help address the spread of this virus as well. So those public health measures we've been describing since the beginning, wearing a mask, you know, keeping physical distance, hand washing, that can help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And you couple that with everyone getting vaccinated when it's their turn, and that gives us a real opportunity to really cut down the rates of new infections. And so I think that when you put these together, you know, we'll see exactly where we land when the combination of vaccinations plus these public health measures, you know, when we get as far as we can get. The hope is that we'll have enough to really stop the spread of this pandemic. But again, that's on all of us to get it done, and I think we can do this.
We'll see what the coming months bring. Let me switch gears to what's happening with the J&J vaccine. We all know it's on pause right now because of that blood clot issue. Then we have the factory issues in Baltimore. Millions of doses were ruined in all of that. When do we expect, or when do you, I should say, expect a decision about whether the J&J vaccine will get back on market again? I understand there's a pretty big meeting at the end of this week.
That's right. The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices is meeting toward the end of this week. And I think that just speaks to the idea that has always been at the center here for us, is that we follow the science, we listen to the experts. That committee is there to make that recommendation after reviewing the weight of the evidence. And so, yes, we had these, 6 instances of those severe clots along with low platelet counts that really caught our attention. It was similar to what we saw with the AstraZeneca vaccine in the UK. And so we said, hey, let's pause. Let's take a look at what's happening here, because our priority has always been the safety and well-being of the American people, and continues to be. So you won't see Johnson & Johnson back until we feel comfortable that we can do so safely. We feel comfortable that we have a handle on who is most likely to be at risk here, or we can give really good guidelines to providers on what to look for. And so I look forward to the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices recommendations, and I think we'll be ready to move forward no matter what. But I want to be very clear. We have enough Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to vaccinate all the adults here in the United States. And so we are going to have enough vaccine. It's more a matter of, will we have this unique tool, this one-shot vaccine of Johnson & Johnson in our tool belt as well.
And so many folks out there in the country love the idea of just one and done. So we'll see what happens with that vaccine the end of the week. Also, speaking of Pfizer, the CEO of that company recently made some news when he kind of put the idea out there that people may need to get a booster shot 6 to 12 months after getting their second dose. At this point, what is the data telling you about the likelihood that all of us who get vaccinated will need a booster shot within a year of becoming fully vaccinated? Are we going to get to a point where this is an annual seasonal thing, much like the flu shot?
Well, at this point, we don't have data to tell us that that's exactly what's going to happen. What we do have are data that suggests that immunity lasts for at least 6 months, and we continue to track and see how long that lasts. Some of this is going to be predicated on how many of those variants are spreading. And the more people who get COVID, the more opportunities the virus has to replicate and to create new variants. And so we're truly racing against the variants here. Vaccination is one of our key mechanisms to stop the virus from changing, from mutating, and from creating new and different problems. And so that booster conversation, again, I would be cautious about, speculating until we have science that tells us that, yeah, that's what we need to do. But as of right now, we don't have that science quite yet. I know quite a few people have talked about it, but, when we see the data that suggests that's the way that we need to go, we'll build a plan around it.
Gotcha. And that's such an important point about the mutations, that the more this virus stays in the bloodstream of the country, the more it has a chance to mutate, variants develop, and perhaps makes the current vaccines on the market less effective. That's why you guys are pushing the vaccination effort so hard. Last question before we let you go here. Ideally, according to Dr. Fauci, we would be about 10,000 or fewer daily new cases in the country. We're still at 60 to 70,000 new cases. We have a while to go. As you look around the country tonight, where are the hot spots? What parts of the country? What demographics?
Well, again, that varies by region. Of course, people know about Michigan and the rate of cases that was increasing, and we're seeing some signs of improvement there. Certainly, there are some areas in Florida that we're concerned about. I think in every community, we're looking to see where are the case rates. We don't talk about necessarily states as a whole. We look at county by county, where are those rates of change, where are the increased spread, and we try to nip that in the bud. And so we're keeping a very watchful eye and close communication with the states, making sure that we're monitoring the changes. But, that's 60,000. That's much improved from the 200, 300,000. We were seeing 250,000 new cases a day at one point just a few months ago. So this is a dramatic improvement. And we think that the more people who get vaccinated, 81% of our older adults now have had at least one shot, folks over 65. So now that we open up eligibility to everyone older than 16, we expect to see more folks vaccinated and fewer cases along with that. So we're moving in the right direction. We just have to keep pushing.
All right, White House Senior Policy Advisor, Dr. Cameron Webb. Doctors, thanks so much for your time and your insight tonight. We appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.